Hi guys, this is SDJRSNF88 speaking and welcome to another update on Fry Somerdale. So welcome to this second update on Fry Somerdale, and I hope you're all safe and well during this very interesting time currently going on in the UK. Like many of you, I'm working from home, carrying on with the railway modeler, but it does mean I have a bit more free time on evenings, with not having to commute like pretty much everybody else in the UK at the moment. So I've been cracking on with progress on Fry Somerdale, and as you can see, the layout has really transformed since the first update. So without further ado, let's get on and take a look and see what I've been working on. So one of the biggest bits of progress since the previous update is the addition of the back scenes. Now it is a bit of a patchwork, but hopefully once all the scenery is in place it should blend together nicely. So I've used a number of different back scenes here to create this. On the right hand side where the line goes off through to what would be Keynsham Station is a generic Gauge Master back scene which I had lying around, which was spare. Now this was the part of the back scene I used on Amiens 1918, and it has like a little town scene, so it wouldn't have been suitable for use on that layout. But thankfully it is pretty much spot on for this. The period which this layout is going to be set in, the 50s and 60s, the houses hadn't been built on the other side of the railway. There was just one or two that you could see in the distance. So there's a couple of buildings on there which look very similar, and there's a nice little tree line on there as well. So it pretty much fits in this area perfectly. I've cut the portal for the entrance to the fiddle yard, and I've sort of blended that section of the scene, the back scene, into there, so it gives the optical illusion that it's going off into the distance. Coming on to the back scene and the one on the left, this is where it gets a bit interesting. This is where the wooded area will be. So what I've done is I've used the same technique that I've used on Argonne Forest, and basically what I've done is I've got a picture of a tree line just down the road from me where I live, and basically I've chopped it all up and sort of shaped it into a rough sort of background on where the wooded area will be, gradually working up higher towards the left of the board. And basically what this will do is this will be a backing piece for the wooded area and give the sort of woodland sense of depth. This is where if you look through the trees you sort of see the picture of the leaves, and it sort of gives the effect that the trees continue on much further back. I've used some of the leftover sky from the Gauge Master back scene to give the blue sky effect and sort of continue that on around. And then in the centre here we have the road. Now obviously I would have liked to have used the actual road outside where this section would have been too, but as you can imagine there are a number of problems with that. First of all, the road has changed quite a lot since the 50s and 60s. It's probably been widened by the looks of it. It's got modern road markings on there. Also as well, you can't really go standing in the middle of a main road just to take a picture. Although you probably would at the moment, because I can't imagine there's much traffic on the road, but then again it's a non-essential journey obviously during this this sort of quarantine to go out and take pictures of a back scene for a layout. I don't think that would class as a worthy cause for travel. And another thing is, basically the whole scene sort of really changed. The walls have been sort of knocked down and changed around. So what I've gone and done is I've improvised and used the same road scene that I've used on Argonne Forest and Amiens 1918. Again, it's a local lane. I've flipped the image around so the road curves around to the left instead of the right, and I've upscaled it, made it a lot bigger, and zoomed in on the background so it's smoothed out the tarmac to give the effect that it's a tarmac main road, and you can see it blends in quite well with the road, which we'll come on to in a moment. So this brings us on to the road surface. Now, I've got to admit, it does look a bit of a mess at the moment, purely because it's not glued down into position. It is all wobbly and not lying flat and flush like it should do. But basically, it's just to give an idea of where everything will go to at the moment. But it is being cut to the correct shape, and it does fit in quite well once you hold it down. So basically what this is a leftover bit of cereal box, pretty much like how I did the road on Amiens 1918. And I've painted it with this. This is Green Scenes textured paint. This is the concrete colour, which is quite pale grey, but basically this will be dulled down and weathered to match the picture on the back scene with Humbrol weathering powders once it's all put into position. So basically I cut the cardboard to size, measured it around the track to make sure it's nice and flush with the edges of the rails, and then I went over with that paint. And of course, you know, being paint and being cardboard, it does ripple and sort of twist the cardboard a bit. But once this has been super glued and pinned into position, and of course all the scenery put on top around the outside, this will be nice and flush as on previous projects. I've also gone and done the pavements. This is basically a separate piece of card which will sit on top, and this gives it a bit of height. I will then go around the edges and add the curbstones with the Metcalf paving slab set. There's a number of little curbstones in there, and I'll cut those to size and add those to the edge to give it a nice sort of lip to it. Around the edge where the rails will be too, where the pavements sort of go down to meet the tarmac, I will then go over with another layer of the paint because it is very, very thick, and it will blend in that quite nicely on the end, and you won't have that sort of sudden drop where the cardboard ends. The same can be said for the inside of the rails, in between the two check rails for the actual crossing, and basically I'll build up a little bit in there, maybe with a bit of card or maybe with a bit of filler, and then I'll go over the top with the textured paint as well. So there's been plenty of progress on the track work. As you can see, it's been glued, pinned, ballasted and weathered, and it really has come up quite a treat. So this is Code 75 Pico Streamline Flexi Track, and what I've gone and done is I've basically ballasted it with Pico brown ballast. I thought it'd be a good one to go for, as looking at most of the pictures, they are black and white, and it was quite hard to pick out what colour the ballast actually was, but it's very obvious from the pictures. It was quite dirty and grubby, and did look like it was replaced quite often, so I thought a brown coloured ballast would be more suited for the area. There was one coloured image which does have patches of light grey in it, but it looks like it was taken in the early 70s, and it looks like they did a few patch repairs shortly before the line was lifted. And because this sort of layout's going to be set in the 50s or 60s, I sort of thought that maybe the brown ballast would be more suited for that. So once the ballast was in place, I then weathered the track. I did the rails with Humbrol red brick, which is pot number 70, and it's come out quite well. I've done the chairs as well. It's the first time I've actually painted and weathered rails. Normally I just do the ties, but I thought with this little scene, I thought it'd really bring it to life, and I'm really, really pleased with how it's turned out. And I've made sure that I didn't get any on the inside of the rail itself where the wheels will make contact, because obviously I'm one of those people that want it to run properly as well as look good, and I know being on a shuttle system it can be quite temperamental, so I made sure that the paint was away from all the places which would make contact with the wheels. I then weathered the ties using a Woodland Scenics paint pen, the wooden tie one, and it's basically dulled down the sort of plastic effect to give them a nice wood sort of colour to them. I've also added the check rails. This was basically some trimmed leftover bits of the Code 75 rail, which I've sort of shaped to match the sharp corner. And you can see I've put the two sections for where the crossing will be. This will obviously be filled in between. And then we've got a long section which goes off into the fiddle yard towards the station. And this is the check rail that was on the tightest part of the corner, I presume to stop wagons and locomotives from coming off on the sharp bend. And I simply just weathered that up and then glued that into position. So I've just had a care package through from Dan of Derails, and basically this is many of the little details that I've ordered up and basically need to complete the layout. So first of all, we got the fencing. This here is the ratio GWR spear fencing, and this will be used for the edge of the car park, and of course the gates, the iconic gates that enter to the Fry site. So I'm really, really pleased that there was something, as I was really struggling to try and find something that basically suited those gates, and this pack does have it in. We also have some of the GWR wooden fencing, and this has the gates which would have been on the station side. So again, that's perfect for that. We've got some Pico static grass tufts. These will obviously be used around the edge of the rails and on the edge of the car park and other little bits of places where weeds would generally be to. We then have a billboard kit. Now these billboards will be located to the front of the layout, in front of the car park. There were 2 of them, and ironically this kit does have 2 of them in there, which is perfect. Depending on which angle they go, and hopefully they won't obstruct the scene too much, I might only just put the one on because they're sort of offset at an angle. So we'll see how it goes, but I've got 2 in there, and ironically one of them does have a Cadbury's chocolate billboard poster in there, so that'd be quite handy to have that on there as well. We also have some telegraph poles. There's a telegraph pole just to the offside of the crossing, along with a concrete lamp, which I've already previously got, and that will be wired in and work. But these will be weathered up and be put into position to sort of create that little scene just to the offside of the crossing. And if I move this box out of the way, you can see we got a lot of fine foliage from Woodland Scenics. There's a number of different tones in here, and this is the stuff that I use on many of my layouts, including Argonne Forest, which I used a lot of this on to create the wooded area. It's great stuff. It's not exactly cheap, but it does give a really, really nice effect. And I've got a couple of boxes of that, and that should hopefully do the whole layout, but at the same time I should have a bit spare for other projects as well. So I guess that's all for this update on Fry Somerdale, and once again I hope you enjoyed the progress on the layout so far. I'm really, really pleased with how the layout has started to take shape over the next couple of days, and now that I've got those items from Dan, I hope that the progress will continue. So with those items I can start measuring things up, such as the proper walls that we're going to position, and of course all the positioning of the fencing and the rest of the line side landscaping, and then I can progress with the forest in the background, so which of course will hopefully transform the whole look of the layout and hopefully sort of recapture some of those images on which I've based this layout on. So I guess that's all that's left for me to say. Is this has been SDJRSNF88 speaking, and thanks for watching.